You know, there's a feeling every single car owner dreads. It's that moment you're just driving along and then bam, the check engine light pops on. Your heart sinks a little, right? But what if we could take that moment of panic and turn it into a clear, step-by-step investigation? Well, today we're going to do just that. So grab your detective hats. So there it is, that little glowing light. You grab your code scanner, plug it in, and it gives you this code, P0300. Now, this is one of the most common and honestly one of the most annoying codes you can possibly get. You should think of it less as an answer and more like the very first clue in a mystery we're going to solve together. So what in the world does P0300 actually mean? Well, to put it simply, it means your car's computer, the ECM, has figured out that one or more of your engine cylinders just isn't firing the way it should be. See, for your engine to run smoothly, every cylinder needs three things: a perfect mix of air and fuel, good compression to squeeze it, and a strong spark at just the right time. When any part of that fails, you get a misfire. But here's the kicker. The word that makes this code so tricky: random. If you got a code like, say, P0301, that would point you straight to cylinder number 1. Easy peasy. But P0300? Well, it's telling you the problem isn't isolated. It's happening randomly, jumping around between cylinders. And that, my friends, is what turns this from a simple fix into a real head-scratcher. And listen, this is not a code you can just put off until next week. When a cylinder misfires, it's dumping raw, unburned fuel straight into your exhaust. That fuel then hits your catalytic converter, which gets incredibly hot and can literally melt its insides. And that's a repair that can easily run you over $1,000, maybe a lot more. So the bottom line is, our investigation needs to start right now. All right, every good detective starts their investigation with the most likely suspects, right? Well, in the mystery of the P0300 code, something like 80% of the time, the culprit is hiding in the ignition system. It makes sense. If you don't have a good spark, you're going to get a misfire. It's as simple as that. And here they are, the usual suspects. Worn-out spark plugs are, without a doubt, the #1 cause. But it could also be a bad ignition coil that's just not producing enough juice. Or, especially in older cars, a crocked spark plug wire that's letting all that precious electricity escape before it even gets to the plug. Now this is where we get to do some real forensic work. Pulling out the spark plugs is it's like getting a direct report from inside your engine. If a plug is wet and oily, it's screaming at you that it got fuel but had no spark to light it. If it's covered in dry black soot, that's a sign of too much fuel. We call that running rich. And if it's chalky white and looks kind of blistered, whoa, that's from extreme heat, meaning way too much air and not enough fuel, a lean condition. Every plug tells a story. Okay, we've identified our prime suspects. So how do we actually start the hands-on part of this investigation? A good detective never just guesses. They follow a clear plan. We are not going to just start throwing new parts of the car. That's a great way to waste money and time. We need a roadmap. So here's our initial 3-step plan. First, always scan for other codes. If P0300 shows up with another code, like a P0171 lean code, that's a huge clue that points you directly towards something like a vacuum leak. Second, a super simple visual check. Is your air filter completely clogged? A suffocating engine is not a happy engine. And third, we need to try and figure out which cylinders are the ones acting up. Now, here's a classic detective technique that can totally crack this case wide open. Even though the code says random, there's often one cylinder that's worse than the others. With the engine idling, you can carefully unplug one ignition coil at a time. If the engine's idle gets way worse, plug it back in. That one's working. But if you unplug one and nothing changes, bingo, that's your dead cylinder. Another cool trick is using an infrared thermometer on the exhaust manifold. A misfiring cylinder will be running a lot cooler than the others. It's a dead giveaway. Okay, what if our spark suspects all have an alibi? You know, your plugs are new, coils are good, wires look fine. Well, it's time to turn our investigation to the next group of culprits, the fuel system. We need to ask, is the engine starving for fuel or is it getting too much? Our next lineup includes dirty or clogged fuel injectors, which is a really common problem. It could also be low fuel pressure, maybe from a weak fuel pump or a clogged up fuel filter. And then there's that sneaky villain, the vacuum leak, which just throws the whole air-fuel recipe completely out of whack. And this slide right here shows you exactly why this matters. A healthy fuel injector sprays a beautiful, fine, cone-shaped mist of fuel. It's perfect for a clean explosion. But a clogged one? It just kind of dribbles or it sprays a messy, uneven stream. That cylinder is basically starving, which causes a misfire. Sometimes a simple bottle of high-quality fuel injector cleaner in the tank can actually solve this one. So what about the main fuel supply? We check that with a fuel pressure test. You just hook a special gauge up to a port on the engine's fuel rail. On a lot of modern cars, what you're looking for is a nice, steady reading of about 60 psi. If your gauge is showing like 40 or if the needle is bouncing all over the place, you've probably found your bad guy. It's almost certainly a weak fuel pump or a clogged filter. And then we have the vacuum leak. I like to call this ghost air. It's air that's sneaking into the engine from a cracked hose or a bad gasket after the main air sensor. So the engine's computer has no idea it's there. It doesn't add any extra fuel to compensate, and that creates that lean condition we saw in the spark plugs. Too much air, not enough fuel. And that can absolutely cause random misfires all over the place, especially when the car is idling. Okay, so we've grilled the spark suspects, we've investigated the entire fuel system. If you have done all that and you're still chasing this P0300 code, well, our investigation has to go deeper. We need to look into the mechanical heart of the engine itself. Now, these causes are a lot less common, thank goodness, but they're also a lot more serious. Remember way back at the beginning, we said you need 3 things for combustion: spark, fuel, and compression. Compression is the engine's ability to actually squeeze that mix of air and fuel. If a cylinder can't build and hold that pressure because of an internal problem, then it just doesn't matter how great your spark or fuel is. It's never going to fire correctly. And here are the heavy hitters. We're talking about things like a burnt valve that can't seal properly, or worn-out piston rings that let that pressure sneak past the piston. It could even be a blown head gasket, which lets compression leak out of the cylinder entirely. And on top of all that, if your engine's timing belt or chain has jumped a tooth, the whole symphony of valves opening and closing is off, and that creates total chaos. Now, to figure these things out, you need a special tool called a compression tester. This is really the definitive final exam for your engine's internal health, cylinder by cylinder. And let's be real, if your investigation has led you this far, it's probably time to call in a professional mechanic to confirm what's going on and talk about your options. So after all that, what's the big takeaway here? That P0300 code can feel really intimidating because it's so vague, it's so random, but it's not some unsolvable mystery. By following a logical, systematic path, checking spark first, then moving to fuel, and only then considering compression, you can turn this confusing mess into a perfectly solvable case. In the end, that check engine light is really just asking you a question. Is this misfire a simple fix, like a $50 set of spark plugs? Or is it a serious warning flag from your engine about a much deeper problem? The good news is, now you have the detective's guide to find the answer.